So we are starting this in a very, very unorthodox fashion. We've just pieced together the parts of our studio. We are still alive on remote here, calling from we in Vermont. And the moment we just started, our son just got sick. So our son just hurled. So Alice is leaving. I've got to call into Michael Yon to come on to talk to us about all of this stuff. And what's going on. And I'm already amazed. I'm already amazed at what I've seen today. Amazed. I mean, man, 2022 is going to make a conspiracy theorist out of me. I'm telling you. I just can't. I cannot believe it. I mean, so as you know, just last night, there were missile strikes by the Iranians at the American Consulate in Erbil in Iraq. So these are a bunch of serious missile strikes, big explosions. They hit the compound, didn't hurt anybody. Okay. But it's a serious act of aggression. And from what I've seen, the Iranians fessed up to it immediately. It's also comes on the heels of, and this is the chatter, the heels of some Iranian guard troops being killed by Israelis. And there may have been some tie-in to the anniversary of Soleimani getting waxed by Trump. So there's a few things at work here, but that's where we are now. So this missile strike, which on Twitter last night was kind of a big thing, of course. On social media, it was kind of a big thing. On the transom is a big thing because it's a missile strike on an American consulate by Iran, the state of Iran. This is not middlemen, this is not Hezbollah or some third-party mercenaries. This is the Iranian government shooting missiles at the American government. That's a big thing. It's a big thing. So far today, what we've had is almost, well, today I listened to all the Sunday shows. Zero coverage on the Sunday shows. Zero. Just nothing at all. I am absolutely blown away. Nothing at all. There was nothing except for the Fox News Sunday show where Brett Baer talked about it. But this is crazy. Iran just attacked us, and we're acting like it's nothing. It's I'm blown away that none of the big shows, except for the Fox Sunday show, even mentioned it. They're all in. They're all in. What you're hearing from the Sunday shows right now they're in lockstep. That Zelensky good, Putin bad, Republicans who are Putin adjacent bad, Trump loves still Putin bad, and Trump bad, and Republicans who are enabling Putin are bad. It's remarkable. Largely, and that's right. And then in the inflation is not because of Biden, and the aggression is not because of anything that Biden did. So what we've got going here, obviously, is the United States government and its press saying it's no big deal. Don't cover it. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. No big deal. The Iranians are slapping us around. We're still begging them, using the Russians who are mediating. We're begging them to let us start a new nuclear deal with them, the Iranians, under the guise of, which is going to give them all sorts of aid and take away sanctions. It's a ridiculous suck up to Iran. I don't know why these Democrats are so obsessed with sucking up to Iran again and again and again. They want to give them more money, and then eventually, you know what's going to happen is they're going to cheat, of course, and they're going to get nukes, and they're going to nuke somebody because they're madmen. They don't play by our rules. They have no values. But so we've taken it now. They just shot missiles at us. They had a missile launch at us, hit our consulate, and we're saying nothing about it. Nothing. The government is saying nothing about it, and their press, the press is in a tough position because one thing the press doesn't want to do. The forbidden land for this press is to be in a position where they would ever say that Trump is doing a better job than Biden or that Biden is failing. They can't. It makes it it puts a positive light on Trump, and they can't do that. So the press is saying, "Oh, we have our narratives are set. We're not going to talk about. We don't talk about Bruno. Yeah, we don't talk about Iran. That's what happens." It's oh no, and it's amazing because it's a huge story. But in my opinion, they're saying no. We've got enough stuff going on. We have enough battle. The press is saying we have enough battles, and the Biden administration is saying we have enough battles as well, dealing with the inflation, the energy crisis that we're in now, dealing with the fact that the Russians cared not for all of our saber rattling and poured right into Ukraine, the disaster in Afghanistan. I think the press is saying we're full up. We can't add another item, another challenge for Biden. We can't. That puts us, the press, into a corner of having to opine on this. And what do we say? How do we say it's not another weakness by Biden? And I think the press feels that they're in a war footing now. The press feels that we're at war with Ukraine. I mean, with Russia, which we technically are not at war with Russia. Ukrainians are at war with Russia. But the media is saying, no, we're not doing anything tangentially, but engaging in this war against Russia right alongside, which is why you're hearing so many people when they've been when all the Sunday shows today interviewed people from other cities in Ukraine. You heard them say, "Keep up the brave fighting." Well, literally, I'm just listening to CNN or whatever saying, "Oh, keep up the brave fighting." But what are you doing? You're not a Ukrainian press person. But everybody decided they're all in. That's it. They're absolutely in the Ukraine. And so now we're ignoring other things that are on the transom. And it's amazing. So here's the Deputy Secretary of State, who is, what is her name? Deputy Secretary Wendy Sherman. And listen to this. Listen to how she addresses this situation with the Iranians firing missiles at us.
Wendy Sherman. Madam Secretary, welcome to Fox News Sunday.
Good to be with you, Brad.
We want to obviously talk a lot about Ukraine, but I want to start where I left off there with General Keane, and that is these 12 ballistic missiles fired on the U.S. Consulate in Erbil, Iraq, from inside Iran. Just in the past few minutes, Iran is now claiming responsibility for that attack. What is the reaction to that, and is there going to be a response?
This was a very concerning attack, as General Keane pointed out. Indeed, we do not believe that the consulate was actually the target of this missile attack. We are very glad that our facilities are secure, that everybody's accounted for, that no one has been hurt or killed. But all of that said, this is great concern. There will indeed be a statement, I'm sure.
And I just killed the recording, so I'll have to start that again. So Alice is going to be screwed up now. Sorry, Alice. But let's get back to Wendy Sherman here.
And is there going to be a response?
This was a very concerning attack, as General Keane pointed out. Indeed, we do not believe that the consulate was actually the target of this missile attack. We are very glad that...
They lobbed 12 missiles at the consulate and hit it. They talked about it. It's been talked about in the press over there, but we don't believe. So we're going to pretend that they didn't take a whack at us, so that we can pretend that we're not being bullied by third world hellholes, and we can pretend that it absolutely makes sense for us to go ahead in good faith negotiations with the Iranians because everything's just fine. Remarkable.
Our facilities are secure, that everybody's accounted for, that no one has been hurt or killed. But all of that said, this is great concern. There will indeed be a statement, I'm sure, coming out shortly, as well as calls in.
Shortly? It happened 24 hours ago. Where's the statement? Shortly? What?
This was an attack on Iraq's sovereignty, among other things, and of great concern to all of us. Obviously, we will be following this closely.
We have U.S. personnel there who work and live there, and as you mentioned, no casualties as of yet that we've heard of. But at the same time, the U.S. is closing in on this nuclear deal with Iran. Is that true? Is it close?
Well, I think it's close, and we would like all of the parties,
point,
including Russia, which has indicated it's got some concerns, to bring this to a close. You know, we are very concerned about what Iran is doing, but imagine these Iranians with a nuclear weapon. We need to get that off the table so we can address their malign behavior in the Middle East, and we will do all of the above. But first, we've got to get this deal, and it is not yet closed.
Madam Secretary, you can understand the disconnect for the average American watching this happening. As we're sitting at a table, not only with the Iranians, but the Russians in Vienna, we are getting fired upon by Iran. You're saying the target wasn't the U.S. consulate, but that's where it ended up. Help people square this circle, because it doesn't seem like a lot of people think that we should be doing that.
It's hard to understand. I appreciate that. But here's the deal. If Iran has a nuclear weapon, its ability to project power into the Middle East and to deter us, our allies and partners, is enormous. So President Biden believes very...
All right. I think we've got Michael on. Hey, Michael.
Howdy.
How are you? I'm sorry about the BOFO communications job I've done here, but thanks so much for...
That's okay. I'm sorry, there's dogs barking here. I'm not.
No problem.
Let me go outside.
Oh, I don't care about the dog.
Are we live? I hope not. It'll be dark out here, though. Alex, do you know how to turn this light on? I hope we're not live right now. I'm traveling.
I was going to. I am technically rolling, but I don't care. I kind of like the dog action. One of our dogs just died, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, let's get out here. And I'm in Florida now. I was with the truckers, and Lord. So anyway, let's talk. I'm getting ready right now to possibly go over to Poland, and so I just left the truckers up in Maryland. I drove over from. I flew from Florida to California, and drove all the way from California to Maryland with the truckers, and that was quite interesting. I mean, there was a huge amount of support with the truckers. And then, of course, I've been, Chuck Holton is over, my friend, really great war correspondent over, and Chuck is over in Ukraine right now. Before the war kicked off, I said, Chuck said, "Do you want to go to Ukraine?" And I said, "No, it's not a hill to die on, for starters. I've done so much war, and it's, at this point, I pick my wars, you know what I mean? And I see the war in Ukraine it's more of a tactical battleground. There's a lot more going on. We're looking at. Let
me start there. Okay.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you a couple. First of all, I want to address the Iranian attack on the consulate from last night.
Right.
Because they fired a bunch of missiles and it hit our consulate compound. These missiles. But you've got the administration now saying, "Oh no, they didn't even want to shoot at the consulate. They didn't even want to." And none of the Sunday shows, except for Fox, even mentioned it, because they're all in with Zelensky, obviously. So,
right, yeah.
So first of all, what the fuck is going on that America's decided that the deputy secretary of state said, "We don't think they meant to hit us. We just want to get on with the peace talks." What peace talks? What are we doing? It's like, what? Why are we trying to make?
Yeah. Well, as you can see, the first question is this just normal background noise with Iran? They're a consummate terrorist state, and they're constantly doing terrorist stuff. That's how the Iranians operate, as you know, right? Mm-hmm. This could be normal background noise because they do launch missiles now and then, and they're constantly doing terrorist strikes. We'll see if a pattern develops quickly. One thing for sure, so with Iran, I don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll move to Ukraine. Anyway, it's interesting because this is state actor. This is not like Hezbollah or something. This is like the real thing. To me, I think they're slapping us in the face because they know we can, because we want to make a deal with these people for some reason. But we'll leave that alone. As far as Ukraine is going, first of all, it's getting bad. And last week at this time, we were going to send them, or let the Poles send them fighters, and now we're not. What do you think's going on?
Well, I mean, it wasn't about us letting the Poles send them fighters. The Poles don't want to get dragged into a neck-deep war with Russia, of course, for obvious reasons. And by the way, I lived in Poland for 2 years, and I was there in Lithuania next door last year for about 6 or 8 months ago for almost a month. And I was publishing that Russia was up to something. It was obvious. I was down in Africa, down in Morocco with Chuck Colton, actually, and Chuck called Frontex in Warsaw, and they said that Frontex, that's a border patrol agency from European Union, said that Belarus, Lukashenko was, the dictator of Belarus's Lukashenko was pushing migrants into Lithuania and trying to do the same in Poland. So we flew out from Morocco immediately up to Lithuania, and I had been with the Lithuanian army in Afghanistan, so I kept my contacts and immediately was in top level meetings with or let's say interviews with their elected officials, the deputy foreign minister, and out with the army and intelligence and police, and really getting full access to their camps and everything. And it was very clear that Lukashenko and Putin were up to something, right? And I was reporting that, like I said, 6 or 8 months ago, and it's been going on ever since. That said, I'm not saying that this is a case where it does take more than two to tango. It's not just Russia waking up one day to do the invasion. I'm not going to get into all that, but the bottom line is we're in a situation right now. I've been warning since January of 2020. We're in a pan for war situation, pandemic, famine, war. When you get a big pandemic or famine or war, you get the other two. Now, we know that this pandemic is largely, falsified and fraudulent and just a massive, that's its own world. However, the things that have been pushed upon us and upon the world have created those normal circumstances that create famine, right? And so now we see with Ukraine a far bigger play in action right now, with Ukraine being their exports have been shut off. They're a major grain producer, and of course the fertilizers from Russia and Belarus and Ukraine. These things, this is all playing into pan for war. I think the bigger situation that's going to unfold as this year unfolds will be, obviously, the United States is going into a sort of economic collapse, while we see global famines that we've never seen before. We've never seen famines on a global scale. I'm not saying everywhere in the world will be, starving. I think that's pretty obviously untrue. But there will be, I think, many famines around the world starting this year, by the end of this year, and by 2023, it's going to be very severe. And remember, famines cause pandemic and war and mass migrations, right? So we can see mass migrations on a scale that we've never seen before. As you know, I spent most of last year rolling around the world: Colombia, Panama, Mexico, Texas, New Mexico, the whole world, Morocco, Greece, Lithuania, just checking out the migration situation, right? Because the migration situation is pretty intense right now. A lot of people have taken their eye off of it, but while we're running off to defend Ukraine's borders, bullshit, our southern border is being invaded. It's unbelievable how many people are coming across. Nobody actually knows how many are coming across. And when you go to Texas and you sit at any of many places, just pick one. You don't have to wait like a day to see some migrants cross. It's like 15 minutes. Here comes the next batch. Here comes here's 2 here, here's 20 here, here's 200. You know what I mean? And it's just it goes, drip, 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 and huge spurred, groups at times, and it's just massive. It's unbelievable. So we're being invaded while our economy is collapsing, while our foods are being exported to China in particular, and other places as well. But China is getting huge exports from it, for instance, from of pork and other things. But while our food prices go up, and the world food supply, and fertilizer supply, and other inputs like fuel, I mean, when it comes time to gas up your tractors and get the ammonium out there, I mean, this is we're looking at something far bigger than Ukraine here. And at this point, when it comes to the jets that you mentioned with Poland, of course, Poland didn't want to send their jets over. Poland's like, we'll just send the jets over to Germany and you can do it. Of course, America's like, whoa. There was some general, I saw him on TV, and he's like, right, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would Poland send them to Germany? Well, it's pretty obvious why Poland would send them to Germany, because let the United States do it or let NATO do it if they want. Poland is on the brink of being in a kinetic war with Russia and Belarus, right? It's right on the border there, right? And, you know, I trained while I was in special forces. We trained specifically to parachute into Poland near the border of Belarus there at a place called Białystok. You can see it on the map. So we trained for several years. That was secret at the time, of course, but now it's not. It's past the time limit. But we trained to parachute in near Białystok to interdict Soviets coming into Poland on the railheads there to spot certain types of rockets and radars, and to, if we saw those, to attack their equipment and kill the crews, and then link up with Polish resistance. So I trained for about 3 years to do that, and also went to language school for it and the whole works, right? That was what, and then later, after I was in the Army, I lived in Poland for 2 years, and I've been all over that area and Lithuania, and I can tell you, it is not an easy place to defend against an attack. They don't have the mountains, well, not in the important corridors anyway. Poland doesn't want a war, and Poland has been very gracious to Ukrainians. They get along with Ukrainians, but they can only take the relationship between Poland and Ukraine is almost like that between the United States and Canada, until they had a dictatorship up there. I mean, it's very like, if Canadians need to get out of Canada because of a wildfire, we're going to take them. You know what I mean? Poland's been doing the same thing with Ukraine, but there's only so many they can take, because Poland has even a smaller. Poland's got less than 40 million people. Ukraine maybe 42 million, and several million apparently have already left. Yeah, not all of them to Poland, and they can only take so many. Your gratitude, I mean, your hospitality does have limits. Not like Poland, has giant warehouses of food, right? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll talk all night.
No, you're right. You're right. But you know what? I can't believe. Thank you for that clarity, because last week Blinken was saying that if Poland wants to, in an autonomous way, send fighters, that's fine. Suddenly, the verbiage changed this week, just like as you were saying, and suddenly it was our job to do it. And I thought that Blinken was being a nice guy last week. So now I see that the Poles wanted to just launder their jets through us, so that we have to
No. That's not what happened. It was us trying to push the Poles to give them their jets. It was us trying to push Poland to give Poland jets, and Poland's like, whoa. No, we'll give the jets to you. It was the United States saying, Poland, give your jets to Ukraine, and Poland's like, whoa, Rambo. They're like, wait a minute, you're kind of putting us into why are you using us as your shield and your epee? You know what I mean? And so, and so Poland said, no, we'll send them to Germany, and, you can replace our jets with F-16s. That's fine. And the United States is like, whoa, why is Poland bucking it being so recalcitrant? Because, listen, I lived in Poland for 2 years, and I'll tell you a lot about Polish people. They're great people. I love Polish people. They're very stubborn. They're like a mule. I mean, I call it a non-Newtonian personality. If you're kind, if you're respectful, and you make sense and that sort of thing, they're easy to work with, very easy to work with, pleasurable to work with. But as soon as you start putting your finger in their chest, the Polish are going to be like, whoa, no. It's non-Newtonian. If you punch ketchup, it'll become almost a solid, right? So it's the same. It's the same with Polish people. As soon as you push them hard, they stiffen up, and that's what. And I said that for years about Germans, the way Germans deal with Polish. I lived in Germany for 4 years. I speak German fluently. I lived in Germany for 4 years. I lived in Poland for 2 years, and I always tell the Germans, like, why do your next door neighbors with Polish? You should understand by now that when you talk down to them and you talk bad to them and you try to put them into their place, guess what? They always do the same thing. They stiffen up, and they're very stubborn. Right. Remember, they didn't give up. They had to put up with communists and then Nazis and then communists again. Yeah. and they're very pro-American, and they're very good fighters. And they're out of all the countries in the world who have really been abused, I mean, terribly abused, Poland is in the top. I don't know if anybody's had it worse, quite frankly, not even the Russians. I mean, they really, and yet they're like, they keep standing up. You punch them in the face, they fall down, and they get back up. And the fact that they haven't just falling apart into one giant ghetto is a testament to the strength of their personality. So when a weakling like Blinken comes up and starts putting his finger in their chest, they're like, dude, we faced off the communists and then the Nazis and then the communists again. You know what I mean? It's like, and we'll face up to little Blinken. It's like,
it's so funny. He does come off so weak. It is so pathetic. Oh, what a milquetoast guy. But let me ask you. Okay.
I mean, sorry,
Alice,
hi, Michael.
remember,
Sorry, I jumped in. Our kid is sick at the same time as doing this show, but so I had to step away for a minute, but I'm back. And, I just kept thinking this, like, what must all these European countries think of Kamala? Because I'm sure they've just been hearing the stuff from our media, like praising her, and she's so historic, and she and Biden are so wonderful. And I think in general, like a lot of European people I know have a tendency to like want to think well of Biden and Kamala. They liked Obama, and and they think they seem like reasonable and nice, but then we send Kamala over there and she's such an embarrassment. What must European people be thinking right now about our country?
Have you noticed how the Polish leaders are actually educated? They actually make sense. And now we've got the EU going after Hungary. I've been to Hungary as well. I may go back to Hungary again soon just to check out atmospherics, but now they're putting their finger in the chest of the Hungarians and the Poles because they're not bowing down to EU pressures on all this woke stuff. Hungary and Poland, they have family values. They're not going to give up their religious views. They're just not going to do it. And now the EU has voted to sanction them during a time of war for all this woke stuff. I mean, that just shows you how out of touch Europe is killing itself. It's committing suicide. Europe is the Middle East for white people. I mean, I lived in Europe for 6 years, 2 in Poland and 4 in Germany, and been all over that place many, many times. And I love Europe. I love a lot of Europeans, and they are poisoned by information war in particular. And the United States is as well. As you know, I've written 3 books on information war. Unfortunately, they're all in Japanese.
Michael, is wokeism that important that like Germany has been, dismantling its energy infrastructure and buying more Russian oil, getting rid of its nuclear plants? I mean, don't they remember the Soviets? Why? This is a suicide pact.
The highest form of warfare is information warfare. That's your PhD stuff. I spent years in combat, out in the shootouts all over the place. Unbelievable. I can't even remember all the shootouts I've been in until I look at my old photos and I'm like, wow, I forgot an entire giant firefight. You know what I mean? I've been in a lot of that, but that's like high school level warfare, right? Once you get into the higher levels of warfare, the highest level by far is information warfare, right? And that's where we're being beaten. That's where we're being beaten. I was down in Colombia last year, and I was with Chuck Colton, actually, in Massaco, Ganaja. We were having lunch with a Senator Maria Cabal from Colombia. Mm-hmm. And she said, why are they getting everybody to speak their own languages, all the indigenous people to speak their own languages and to fight us and to fight each other? And I said, Maria, my office is in Thailand. They're doing the same thing there. I was out with it for a year with the Maoists in Nepal. One of the things that the Maoists were constantly doing was getting everybody to Tower of Babel, speak your own languages, do your own, and my office is in Thailand. I see it happening between Indonesia and Malaysia, for instance, on the, the cultural appropriation. They get Indonesians and Malaysians fighting over who did this music first, right? It's like, and so it goes on and on and on. So I see this all over the world, trying to get people to break apart at the atomic level, families to break apart from your church or your temple, especially break apart families, men fighting women, men and women confused about their gender. This is all part of psychological warfare, information warfare, brought to the nth degree at this point. And so that's where you can never waste a moment of your time studying psychological warfare, brainwash. A great book is called Rape of the Mind. It came out in 1956. I recommend it to just thousands of people. Rape of the Mind. Read it. 1956. When you read Rape of the Mind, page by page, you're going to go, wait a minute. We just lived through that for 2 years straight, and we're still living in it. Rape of the Mind. It's written by a Dutch psychologist who went through the Nazis and Vichy France. Anyway, go ahead.
And no doubt, and you're right. And obviously, they're using this crazy wacko stuff to destroy all of the institutions, like you mentioned as well. But I mean, how come Putin and Russians are immune to it? How come some countries are immune to this wackiness?
They're not. I mean, information warfare is one of the ways we helped break the Soviet Union. I mean,
or is it emanating from Russia, Michael? Actually, is it emanating from Russia?
No, they're not the only ones. We're pretty good at it ourselves. As you can see, we've been doing it to ourselves. But the Russians have been extremely good at information warfare. The British used to be masters at it. Chinese are very good at it. There's many people that are good. That's like nobody has a monopoly on artwork, right? And great information campaigns are works of art. I mean, they're part science and part art. They're that fusion where it becomes this incredible thing. The best information wars, you can never tell you're in them, because they're like an IMAX. Everywhere you look is the same messaging, for instance, whether you look in the encyclopedia or a museum or the movies or the musicals or what. Anyway, go ahead.
But I think about that, how even like this Ukraine thing, it's like this weird mass hysteria thing. And I mean, obviously there's a real actual war happening there as well. But to watch sort of everybody go from, like, last week we all had George Floyd pictures, and then the next week we all did this, and then the next week, and now the thing is, now we're all about Ukraine, and we
have to hate Russia and Russian dressing and everything Russian,
and it's just weird to watch everybody like transform in real time, like to like this new obsession. It's really an odd phenomenon to watch.
This is the art of information war. Again, rape of the mind, 1956. Everything you're seeing is late, or 1984, George Orwell. I mean, watch the movie, read the book. I mean, this is it. I mean, it's like George Orwell going through and in 1984, reading off endless statistics in the movie. Watch the movie or read the book. And, they're going on for like 5 minutes of, 3,000 grenade launchers made this week, 42,000 rifles, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on for like 5 minutes. Remember all these statistics that are droning on during, the pandemic, right? One of the ways that you're made weaker is it's right out of the 1956 book, just going on and on and on with statistics that don't mean really anything. But people are like, oh yeah, here it is, And these things, because boredom is one of the ways that's used to weaken your mind to insert the message, right? Boredom. So when you just get this thing over and over and over, which you don't quite understand, that's just another way of weakening your mind to insert messages. But again, for instance, let's talk about information war on Ukraine. I mean, when did this actually start? I don't know. It obviously started some years ago at a minimum. But for instance, Zelensky, when I first saw him out there, I'm like, wow, he's got good leadership qualities. And I published a couple of things on that right off the bat. I'm like, oh, good. He's staying behind. He's like really manning up. And then as I started watching, I was with the truckers on the convoy, so I wasn't able to pay full attention to it. I started breaking away from them to pay more attention to what's going on in Ukraine. I'm like, wait a minute. Zelensky looks like part of a great information campaign, actually. I mean, it's pretty obvious for me that studies. I mean, for instance, okay, there's always these allegations that the Azov battalion and all that are Nazis. There's Nazis in Ukraine. They know that's coming. So what do? Well, Zelensky, he's handsome, young, he's, tough guy. He's an actor, of course. Turns out he's an actor and a comedian. And he's Jewish, of course. So that puts baking soda on that acid, right? On the Nazi thing. It couldn't be anything like that because he is Jewish, So they're crossing all the T's and dotting the I's, so to speak. I watched an interview with another Ukrainian mayor. I've forgotten his name. It was about 2 or 3 days ago. And again, young guy, very fit. He looks like an actor, actually. And he's like, I was in the army, and his English was quite good. I'm just like, yeah, this is an obvious information campaign. You know what I mean? These are role actors, like AOC, like so many that are out there that are literally picked and put into those positions. This is an old.
The female MP in Ukraine who stayed behind, who's going to fight until the end.
Right. She's got a chick with a machine gun and a cigar. It's like, so every American guy is like, yeah, goddamn right.
Well, and even Zelensky. The stories that were like immediately debunked, like the Snake Island thing and stuff. It's just such a slick, slick PR campaign. Right. The whole thing.
So, Michael, let me ask you, as somebody who's seen every kind of actor in conflict around the world now for more than 20 years, who's the good guy, or is there a good guy? Who's the bad guy? Should the Polish give planes to people? What should be done?
Well, everybody's got their own position, of course, right? Putin actually has concerns that, let's face it, Russia and the Soviet Union have been one of the consummate evils, right? I mean, communists have killed more people than militant Islam, or certainly even more than Nazis, right?
Yes.
I mean, communists, they kill on a wholesale. They kill by the dozens of millions, right? And Stalin did his big Holodomor famine in Ukraine in the 30s. I mean, it's epic. I mean, these things they just do these things like a normal day, right? So they are no angels, period. At the same time, they are going to exist and they are going to live, and we have been able to live with them in relative peace. And the Russians are very concerned as NATO continues to expand. Of course, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, of course, are now right there, getting encroaching further and further, and not to mention trying to push Ukraine to join into NATO. But I think there's much higher plays. There's many actors here. So when somebody asks, well, who's running all this? It's like asking who runs the jungle, right? Nobody runs the jungle. The jungle is the jungle. There's the tiger, the crocodile, the puma, and the mosquitoes, right? Everything's out there, right? And we've got that here. We've got many different interests pulling and pushing. Sometimes they're in conjunction with each other, and other times they're in opposition. And we've got, with Ukraine right now, clearly being more aggressive towards Russia. And, Russia's, quite worried. I mean, and we've just been pushing that button. We've been putting our finger in Putin's chest. You see this thing about Russian collusion with Trump. And I'm thinking, where did this even come from? I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And then, later it was turned out to be untrue. But, Russia also has had a long history of being invaded. So they've also been the victim. And then when that victim stands up, it becomes the victimizer again, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, again, that's why I say, having lived in Europe for 6 years, Europe is the Middle East for white people. I mean, they are a fractious group. And if you've got a United States who has really helped to keep the peace there ever since World War II, an exemplary job up until recent years, the United States, I mean, if we hadn't have been there, it would have continued to be just a bunch of wars. And I'm really proud of the way our country helped to bring Europe into a better age. But at this point, the government that we have now is pushing it the wrong direction. And, we're trying to push Poland into taking migrants into Poland. For instance, we've been pushing them for years to do that. The EU has been pushing. And I tell them, listen, for the good of the migrants, for the well-being of the quote unquote migrants, do not send them to Poland, because they're not weak white guys. They're not Swedish. If you start raping Polish women, they're not going to call the police. They're going to come and kill you. They will take you on the street and beat you to death in the street, and the police will come to get you. And I'm telling you, that's how Polish go. That's how they roll. They're still got the strength of a lion in them, right? And the Hungarians are the same way, and many of the Czechs are, and the Slovakians as well. Lithuanians, they'll roll. You know what I mean? And so pushing this idea that we should just listen. I've been to more than 80 countries. I've spent more than half of my life in other countries, right, outside of the United States, more than half. And I've learned some lessons. One of those lessons is not all fish will mix well in the same aquarium, right? And pushing fish into the Polish aquarium, it ain't gonna fly. I mean, Poland is as homogenous as is Japan. It's just like it's sort of like a white guy Japan, insofar as Poland is Poland. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
And just leave them alone and leave them alone. Do business with them and intermarry and all that stuff. And we're great friends and allies, but you got to give them some space.
But if they're going to take, I mean, but then what's the way to shut off the refugee surge other than stopping the Russians? So is the way to end this by stopping the Russians, repelling the Russians somehow?
I don't think this is going to stop easily at this point, because now the fire started. As you know, it's easier to start a prairie fire than it is to put it out. And these things, the way that it's going now, because you see, we're in a much larger dynamic. We're heading into a massive food crisis. And now some people see it now and others don't. I've been warning about it since January of 2020. I've been warning about it now for 2 years and 3 months. Stock up, it's coming. And you can see it's clearly coming this year. This is the year that it comes to fruition. And that will put so much energy into the system insofar as, mass migrations, as an example, that'll be unpredictable. Like what's going to happen? I was checking on Indian food security today. India looks okay at the moment, but I'm unsure, actually. I may have to go over there and look myself and talk with, a bunch of Indians and get their feel on the ground. Because sometimes, you just can't tell from afar. What's going to happen with Bangladesh, for instance? If Bangladesh has a big food shortage, where are they going to go? They're going to push through, Myanmar and end up in Thailand, right? And what about Africa? All over Africa, of course. China wants Africa. We know that. This is food shortages and mass famine would be a fantastic way for China to take big parts of Africa. So, so there's a lot of people, when you study famine, you'll find that in almost every big famine, which there haven't been that many in our lifetimes, there haven't been any huge ones in our lifetimes. But when you get famines, there almost always have human intervention, right? Like the potato famine with the Irish. The English were a big cause of that. Or, down in, other famines, such as in Bangladesh, the English again, Victorian famines. These sorts of things are, when you have a big famine, there's almost always human input. And this time the human input is fantastic. It's unbelievable. It's off the charts. We've seen that the food exports from Ukraine, a major food exporter, has just been squeaked down tight. Nothing coming out. And how many farmers are going to be planting when there's tanks rolling through their farms? When the farmers have run off to Poland and and Germany and whatnot. So next year you can see how this is playing out.
Let me ask you something: do the Russians stop in Ukraine, or do they push through to Poland or something?
If they push through into Poland now, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, they might go for it. I know Lithuania, their main defense plan will be, of course, guerrilla. They call them the Forest Brothers, actually. And that's a Forest Brothers strategy. That's what they plan to do. They've been preparing Lithuania for years to do just a guerrilla type resistance. And I think that they could be good at it. First of all, they still have a fighting spirit, and but there's not many of them. And they're very exposed. Look, if you look at the map and you look at Kaliningrad there, right now today, in fact, Lithuanians were putting more forces on the border of Kaliningrad. And a lot of people don't realize it, but there's a little enclave of Russians there that border Lithuania and Poland called Kaliningrad. It's on the Baltic up there. You see that little, basically almost island. It's not an island. It's landlocked, or it's not landlocked. It's on the Baltic as well. But there's a little piece of Russia there that's all broken off and it's heavily armed, right? So Russia's already, you might say, behind enemy lines, which is our friendly lines. They'll get a heck of a fight from the Polish, I'm sure of that, and the Lithuanians. But I think if they tried to push through Poland, the resistance, first of all, you're going to activate Article 5 of NATO. So I'm not big on the United States going into Lithuania. Into Ukraine. Yeah. They're not a NATO member, despite it seems like everybody knows they are wrongly. They're not a member of NATO. Yeah. Ukraine is not a member of NATO. I say it like every day, 20 times. Ukraine is not a member of NATO, right? And so, but Lithuania is, and Estonia and Latvia are, as is Poland. So if those countries are attacked, then we should attack back, because they are. We have an obligation to fight
Michael,
back.
Do you have any faith in 2022 when Emmanuel Macron, tweeted out pictures of himself crying the other day, when all of these leaders in Europe, with some exceptions, like maybe the Polish leaders in Hungary as well, use their pronouns? Do you have any faith that Article 5 is something that we would really execute anymore?
Well, no. That's one reason I don't want to go into Ukraine, is because I don't trust our military. We got how many West Point cadets that were just overdosed in Florida? Was that Florida? just overdosed the other day, right?
Yeah.
West Point cadets. I mean, our military. We see cadets now graduated from West Point that they shouldn't even be in the military. Period. Right? I mean, it's just pathetic. People joining up to get sex changes, and just it's absolutely pathetic. And of course, we'll all get canceled for saying these words, but I don't care. Go ahead.
Isn't the recruiting in the military like a disaster right now too? I mean, like I would think that if we get drawn into a bigger, more extended war, that there's a potential for there to be a draft in this country again. Because I don't know what the situation, but they seem pretty desperate.
Notice no generals have stood up. Not a single general has stood up. Not a single active general or admiral has stood up and said, "Hey, this is wrong. I'm willing not to take the next star." Not a single one, right? Yeah. And we saw what happened in Afghanistan, and it's just unbelievable. How many tens of billions of dollars of equipment did we just give away to the Taliban? They are now a major army. It's unbelievable. So here we go. Information war. We got pathetic Biden. He doesn't even know he's president. He probably thinks he's president of student council right now. Kamala Harris, who's got an IQ of about 90, can she even string together a single, Ukraine is a country in wherever. What did she say? It was just, mind-boggling.
Country. Russia's big, and they attacked a smaller country, which is bad.
She also said yesterday that Ukraine was a member of NATO, essentially. Hey, Michael Yon, thank you so much. You guys can listen to him at Michael Yon, Michael_Yon. Go to michaelyon.com. There's no other military correspondent reporter out there like him. If you guys don't know, you probably all know him. Last time we had you on, we had a zillion listens because the world knows who you are, and you're great. Michael, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. When I get to Poland, let's come back on, and I'll tell you what's going on over in Poland.
Please, let's do it. Absolutely. Thanks so much, man.
Talk later. See y'all.
Thank you very, very much. That is Michael Yon. That was quite a roller coaster ride, Alice, huh?
Incredible.
Okay, hold on. It's asking me to.
You having trouble with your Zoom meeting? I had to make Tom the Zoom meeting host because
I'm not ready for prime time. Hold on. Where's Burn Barrel? Burn Barrel. I'm looking.
It said the meeting was ended by the host, so I did end the meeting.
I was supposed to, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So now it's Alice time.
Is it Alice time?
Yeah.
Oh.
Isn't this Alice time? The time when we say goodbye to people, except for those people on
except
Patreon?
for the Patreon people. So we do have some more stuff to talk about. So we're going to head over to do our Patreon show. But what a great conversation that was with Michael Yon. You can follow him on Twitter, Michael_Yon. You can follow us. We're the Burn Barrel Pod on Twitter, at Burn Barrel Pod. And you can, if you want to hear the extra Sunday show, you can go to patreon.com/burnbarrel.